So again, thanks everyone for joining us today for getting started with Rivery. We're going to cover today just a few really quick slides about Rivery for those of you who aren't familiar at all with what we do. And then we'll jump right into actually the cool stuff. We'll talk about creating pipelines and workflows in Rivery. We'll talk about the ingestion pipelines, the extract and load part. We'll discuss monitoring and logging what's happening with your pipelines. Then we'll delve into advanced workflow orchestration, creating actually advanced workflows. We'll discuss transformations, both using SQL and or Python. And then time permitting, we might get into our starter kits, which are literally just kind of one-click kits to get started and to set everything for you. We'll talk a little about reverse ETL, custom REST API sources, environments and deployment, which are great for going from dev to production, and then Q&A. So just really quickly about the company, we actually started as an internal tool at a BI consulting, one of the biggest BI consulting firms actually in the world, where we were looking for basically the data stack that we always wanted. And we looked at the different tools out there and just couldn't find the actual platform, which is what we wanted for our own clients. So we built it in-house. And then after a couple of years, realized, well, this is actually a really cool tool that other companies would want. And so we released it as Rivery, and that's where we came from. We do have offices all over the world. And one of the great things about our product is we really made it to adapt to both small startups as well as big enterprise companies. The solution itself, as you can see, has a lot of different parts, but at its heart, it has the kind of ELT or the extract and load part where we have over 190 native connectors to all the major sources you could want, APIs, marketing, CRMs, as well as databases, all the major databases you can pull from. And we also make it really easy to connect to custom connectors if you don't have it out of the box. So that's pretty cool there. We also have the whole part of orchestration and transformation. So conditional loops, basically being able to create advanced workflows within the tool so you don't need another tool to do so. And we also recently added Python to this. So you can execute whatever Python code you want as part of your pipeline. And then last but not least, in terms of data management, we have the features and functionalities you need basically to adapt to best practices in software and data stack development, things like different versions and environments and deployment scripts to really make sure that this is not just a tool you set up as something which you can manage and monitor and change along the way. So enough of talking about Rivery. I'm going to now hand it over to our solutions team, our solutions engineer, who will take you through the product and just show you how easy and powerful Rivery really is.
Thank you very much. So what you're looking at here is one of our home screens. Just in the top left, we have our Create button. And we'll be going through all of these individual use cases here. The first one is our source to target. So this is just the pure ingestion piece, right? Getting data from point A to point B. And then this is really the glue to all the other pieces here, including our logic river. So once the data has been ingested, the logic river essentially allows you to take that data that's been landed and then apply those transformations, all using SQL pushdown in your cloud data warehouse. Additionally, you can also run Python transformations. And then we also have our action river, and that is the ability to turn any REST endpoint into a source or a target. So if you want to get data via API, you can do that. Or if you want to push data back to a business application, you can also do that via API. And then lastly, we have our kits, and that is essentially our pre-built data pipelines and pre-built data models. So before I jump into it, you will notice I'm working in my dev environment. So you do have the ability to have multiple environments, potentially across multiple lines of businesses. So I'm going to start here by creating a source to target river to start off. And I'll be going through a few tabs here between source, target, and settings. But the first piece of information you need is where you want to pull your data from. So Rivery has over 190 native connectors out of the box, from marketing to analytics, CRM systems, organizational, payments, relational databases, And I will pause here because with relational databases, Rivery allows the flexibility to do change data capture or standard extraction. So with standard extraction, you can read directly against a table or view, or with, say, a Microsoft SQL Server, we also allow change data capture reading from a binary log or change tracking. We also support NoSQL, storage layers, APIs, and webhooks. So I'll come back up to the top here, and we'll start our demonstration off with a simple Salesforce integration. So the first thing you need to do is establish a connection. I have one already pre-built here, but if I come over here and click on new connection, you'll notice the documentation pops up on the right-hand side to walk you through how to securely connect using credentials, OAuth 2, and you can determine if you want to pull from your sandbox or production environment. Once you have established a connection, it's a matter of how you want to retrieve that data. Our most common method here is using our multi-table, so grabbing multiple objects at the same time. You can also grab a single object. And then the Salesforce API has two different methods of loading. The preferred way is the bulk API, but there are some objects that do not allow the bulk API and still rely on the SOAP API. I'd just like to call out that we do auto detect new fields in each run. So if you were to add a new column, a custom object, something like that, you can auto detect anytime that a new column has been added, and it will automatically get added to your target destination. And same thing goes with relational databases as well. With when we read from a relational database, the new column is added to a table, it will get added to your target as well. If it's deleted, it won't break your pipeline. Rivery just will automatically remove it from the pipeline, and no new data will get added to that column. So now that we have our Salesforce connection, I'm going to choose multiple tables, and I'm going to leverage the bulk API. I'm going to come over here and choose my target. Rivery partners with the biggest and the best, so you can choose from BigQuery, Redshift, Snowflake, Azure, Databricks, etc. For this demonstration, I'll choose Snowflake. And again, the first thing I need to do is establish my connection. If I come over here, you'll notice, again, the documentation pops up on the right-hand side. And then with Snowflake, I always like to call out, you do have the ability to leverage a custom file zone. So some other vendors out there are temporarily going to store your data before landing it into Snowflake. With Rivery, you can actually choose your own file zone here. So you can treat this as a data lake, load this into your S3 bucket, and you have your own retention policy. Data can stay there as long as you'd like. So once I have my connection established, it's just a matter of where I want to put that data. For this use case, I'm going to load it into my demo DB and my public schema. If you don't know the database or schema off the top of your head, you can ping this little icon over here and you have a dropdown available. And then you can just give it a table prefix. So I'm pulling from Salesforce, I can load sfdc _. Then you just need to choose your loading method. The most common method is the upsert merge. This matches on a primary key and will update any data that exists. And if it doesn't exist, it will insert it. You can also append the data to the end of the table or completely override it. So I'll move forward with my upsert and move over to my schema tab. The schema tab is essentially your source to target mapping. It's going to load all the metadata from the source system, and you can pick and choose which objects you want. You can grab all of them. You can grab a subset. For this one, let's say I just want my leads, and I can search for, say, my contacts. Once I have the objects that I want, I can come over here, these three icons, and say show only those selected tables. So now I have the two objects that I want to load. I can click on them to get a bit more granular, and it will show me the individual columns. My internet's slow today. It will show you the primary key that's already been defined for you that gets created in Snowflake. You can change any column names if you'd like. Your data types are already defined. If I come over into table settings, you can apply any filter here. This is essentially a where clause in your target environment. For any large data sets, you can chunk that data into smaller queries. You can include logical deletes, and then also change your extract method. So instead of loading the entire data set, let's say I want to load from my last modified date from yesterday, I can do that. And Rivery will automatically increment these start and end dates for you. So if I run this today, my next start date will be my last current runtime. Okay. So coming back here, now I'm going to load 2 tables from Salesforce into Snowflake. In this case, I'm going to do one is incremental as of yesterday, and then the other one is going to load all my contacts. So coming over here to settings, I have the ability to schedule this as frequent as every 5 minutes. I can schedule it at any of these frequencies, or if anyone's familiar with cron, you can plug in a cron expression to set up a custom schedule. If I don't want to schedule it, I can run this on an ad hoc basis. I can also trigger notification email messages for any failures, warnings, or thresholds. This is essentially a comma set list of email addresses stored in your variables. The most common question I get is, what other methods of alerting do you have? We can also set up Slack alerts, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. So I can come up here and give this a name. Like save. And now if I were to schedule this, it would kick off the next available schedule, or I can just go ahead and click on run. And since it's not scheduled, this will just be in my list of rivers, and I can go ahead and run it or schedule it as deemed fit. Now it's just waiting to get started. As soon as this kicks off, it will be available in my activity tab. And while we wait for that to run, and in addition to the activity tab, you can always find other activities in your activity tab on the left-hand side here. It will show you all your success failures from the last few days. You can also go back with a custom date range to see all your different rivers that are running, that have failed. You also have your dashboard available here to see the most common pipelines that are running, as well as how many RPUs or Rivery pricing units have been consumed. So if I come back over here, this one's still waiting to kick off. So we'll come back to that in just a few moments and see how we're doing. So with that, we talked a little bit about our source to target, right? So this is, again, just getting data from point A to point B, loading from Salesforce into Snowflake. But Rivery takes your pipelines one step further using our logic river. And a logic river is essentially the true end-to-end pipeline that allows not only ingestion, but also transformation. For example, because I didn't schedule my Salesforce river, I have the ability to not only load my data that I just created from Salesforce into Snowflake, but after it's been loaded, now run those SQL transformations, all using SQL pushdown. So all I have to do is select my Snowflake connection. I can expand this window, and now I can say select some just one join 2 on X equals Y, right? So you can do all your different transformations or unions, your aggregations. All of this, the power of Snowflake is all available within this Rivery console. So this is doing true SQL pushdown. We're not storing anything in memory. We are just orchestrating the SQL query. Once you're happy with the query, I can come over in here and hit run. This will run the query in your Snowflake environment and show your SQL preview results here. Once you're happy with those results, I can store those results in a new table. All I have to do is choose where I want to load it, my database, my schema, and what the table name is going to be. And based on those queries, I can actually run upsert merges and push any deltas, any new changes. All I have to do is click on column mappings, add in a different column, and apply what key I want to match it on. So just to reiterate, not only are we ingesting all of either the entire data set or yesterday's data set into Snowflake, once the data has landed, I can now run my SQL queries and use that SQL pushdown and push it to a new table. So I have a real life example available here. And this is around our marketing use case. So I want to ingest data from all my marketing platforms, such as Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. I want to grab all my different ad information. Again, this is purely ingestion. I want to ingest all my ad spend for all those 3 different platforms. After the ingestion is complete, I can then start running my transformations. Things like applying my aliases, doing my unions, doing all my different joins. So this is actually creating all those different fact and dimension tables. After those dimension tables are created, now I can finally generate the end table that joins all those together, flattens out, parses all the different arrays. Again, all those complex transformations all in a single query, ready to hand off to my business intelligence team for reporting. So this is a decent amount of SQL. It's a decent amount of engineering work. So what Rivery has done is actually package this entire pipeline into the concept of a kit. So all of this ingestion, applying the aliases, joining those data sets together, marrying them, and creating that final fact and performance table is all available in our kits. And kits, as I mentioned, is that pre-built data pipeline or pre-built data model. So if I were to search for that same B2C Snowflake kit and hit preview, this is, again, ingesting from Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat, marrying all those data sets together. It shows you how many credits you're consuming by using this kit, but look at this data model that is generated on the end. All your primary keys are defined. Again, here's your alias to determine where it's coming from. So you've got your dimension tables and your final performance table. All you have to do is click on Use Kit. This will essentially prompt you to plug in your credentials. After you've done that, you can start running your kit and it will ingest data from all those different tables and marry all those data sets together. All I'd have to do is click on Next and you're ready to start running all these different platforms and you have a data model built in just a matter of minutes. Going back to my kits, we've got a number of different kits here around DBT integration. There's plenty here around slowly changing dimension, many with our native sources like Google Ads, Google Analytics, things of that nature. So for anyone out there looking for a quick time to value, trying to get data and a quick data model into your Snowflake environment or any environment, I would suggest coming over here to kits and just browsing through because there's a lot of cool features here. One of which is around our Slack alerts. So if a pipeline were to succeed or fail, you have the ability to trigger that Slack alert using an API. So some pretty cool stuff here. Additionally, going back to our logic rivers, instead of just SQL pushdown, we also have the ability to run Python. So once that data has been ingested, I can load that into a data frame. After the data frame has been loaded, run your Python transformations, run your ML models. You can push that back out to a data frame and then back into Snowflake. So not only doing SQL pushdown, but also Python transformations as well. So we've talked about ingestion. We've talked about transformations using both SQL and Python. And then we've talked about kits. So the last two use cases I wanted to touch on are around action rivers. And the action river, as I mentioned, is the ability to turn any REST endpoint into a source or a target. So if I wanted to get data and treat it as a source, I'd be making a get call. If I wanted to push data back to a business app, it would be a post or a put if I wanted to do an insert or an update. So I have one pre-built already. This one here is getting a list of users from this API URL. It's a public endpoint, so I don't need to authenticate, but if I did, I can authenticate using ID and password or OAuth 2. I have the ability to pass any headers here or any parameters. In this case, all I want to do is get that list of users. So I'm going to come over in here and click test REST action. What this is doing is going to ping this API endpoint, retrieve the metadata, and as you can see, I have my ID, my email, my name, some other attributes as well. So now that I have my API connected, what I can do is come back over here to create new river, source to target. And since it's not available out of the 180 native sources, all I have to do is type API. And this is now available in my dropdown. Again, loading this into Snowflake. And in this case, I'm not going to load any of this information here, but all I'm going to do is come over to schema and click on auto mapping. And it's going to do the same thing, grab that metadata, grab the headers, as well as the data types, and Rivery will automatically generate that table for you. So you've got all your columns here, you've got all your data types. I can now choose my primary key as my ID. And you can start to think about how I can perhaps add a parameter for something like a last modified date. And now I can start to run incremental pulls from that API and push only the deltas, only the new records into this table, into Snowflake. And then lastly, again, just going back to our action rivers, instead of a source, I mentioned you also have the ability to push data back to the business. So again, I have one available already, and this one is around Jira. So you'll notice over here, I have a Jira board. So this is just a sample board where I'm going to create tasks for my team. Now you'll notice that I have my Jira API URL. And instead of a get, I'm making a post call. Now, the only difference between a get and a post call with this UI here is now I have a body. And the body is where I'm going to store the payload that I want to send to the app. So in this case, I have my primary key, which is the demo board. I have some custom attributes. In this case, let's pretend I'm pulling from Salesforce or a CRM system. So I have what the deal is, and I have my custom attributes. All of those are stored in my variables. So for example, my deal name is called getting started. I have all of these other attributes like who it's assigned to, etc. So if I come over here and click run, what it's going to do is it will automatically save, as it's doing right now. And then it will authenticate using my base64 encryption. It's going to ping this API URL, and it's going to pass this body in. So again, it's going to write to this demo board. I have all these different attributes. And it's not running at the moment. There it goes. There, now it's running. So in just a moment, you will notice that it's going to add in a task, and there it is. So here's my new task. You'll notice all my custom attributes have been assigned. My assignee has been correct. So this is just an example of how I can push data back to the business. So in a real life example, what that would look like is a logic river. So step one would be to ingest data. So I want to grab any new Jira users or any new Salesforce data. After the data has been landed, I need to start doing my transformations. So basically, I need to select which columns I want. So the name of the opportunity, who it's assigned to, and all my custom attributes, and then pass those dynamically into variables. And then the final destination would be my API. So those same attributes that you just saw in my API, those same variables are now assigned dynamically. So that is how you would store data in your Snowflake environment. And then once it's transformed, push it back to a business application. Things like Jira, Slack, Salesforce, ServiceNow. Opportunities are pretty much endless on where you can send data back to, as long as there's a REST endpoint. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on quickly, because I know we are running low on time. So we talked a little bit about working in environments. I'm working in dev at the moment. You have the ability to create variables across each of the individual environments. So if you push from one environment to the next, you don't have to worry about credentials crossing over. If I come over to packages, I can create a new package to push from my dev environment to production. Just need to go through a few settings. Things like, do I want to inherit credentials from one environment to the next? That's set to default by no. So I come over here and choose which rivers I want to select. I can grab all of them, a subset, determine which cloud connections I want, etc. Come over here and hit deploy, and you are able to push from one environment to another, and it will inherit all of the connection information, any sub rivers, etc. So with that, I will press pause here, and let's see if there are any questions in the chat.
Thanks so much. I was on mute. So at this point, I am going to open it up to the Q&A. If you have any questions, please just enter them in the Q&A, which you should have at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. In general, if you want to learn more, obviously you can just go to Rivery.io. We also give you the opportunity to book a call with one of our data experts who can definitely not only talk about the product itself, but really help you understand the specific challenges that you may be facing and how to solve them with Rivery. I want to say one of the differentiators with Rivery is we don't see ourselves as just a platform, but really a partner in terms of making sure that you are successful in solving whatever data challenges you have. And if you just have any questions to email, you can just send us an email to contact. So it actually looks like I'm not seeing any questions, which means we probably did a good job of explaining how to use Rivery. There is a lot to do, obviously, or a lot that you can do with Rivery. We pride ourselves on being able to be easy enough to use for most of what you need to do. And if you need something more advanced, you can either figure it out, or you could go to our documentation at docs, or just contact us. So again, thank you everyone so much for joining today's webinar. We will be sending the recording to everyone tomorrow, and have a great day.